Hi, this is Trisha Schmalhofer with BAM Badasses, Alchemist Mystics, here with Laura Carrotti. Laura is a seeker of meaning. She spent the last 2 decades studying with masters and fools all throughout India, Thailand, and South America. The core of Laura's teaching and her mission is to bring people back into their totality and to help them reevaluate the relationship they have with their sexuality. Her work blends self-inquiry, dynamic forms of meditation, breath, yoga, and good old honesty. Her specialty is in unraveling the war we are all in with ourselves. Laura has been leading Tantra groups in Europe, Asia, South America, and the U.S. for over a decade, and teaching yoga philosophy and practice for almost 2. She is also a trauma-informed, somatic experiencing practitioner. And she swears an awful lot, but she's great fun. And Laura, is there anything you want to add to your bio? Anything you want to share with us that wasn't covered?
No, I think we got it.
Okay, good.
I think that was about it.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I met you, Laura, by looking for a Tantra retreat online. A friend of mine, a mentor, suggested that I explore the real Tantra, not what America thinks Tantra is. And I went online and I saw you were having an intensive, it's 5 days. It was out in Mount Shasta, Northern California. And there was a video where you were describing the work. I looked at the description and it was all about going within, and the masculine and the feminine within me was how you were describing Tantra for this retreat. And you explained it is an intensive, and it sure the heck was. And it was hard work, but it's not for sissies. But I got so much out of that intensive, and just fell in love with you as a teacher. So how long have you been doing those in-person intensives and workshops?
You know, they've been taking place in a bunch of different forms, but I would say that this last incarnation, because it's like I started with a very different kind of work when I was doing live works, and like trial and error and my own personal growth and just like the need that was coming from the outside world changed it a lot. And I would say this newest incarnation made its debut in probably about 2014-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Was when that started to come together in this form.
Okay, got it. So during the in-person intensives, you warned that we'd be working like all day, and we did. It's an immersion. And there was a lot of work with getting in our bodies. Can you explain why that's important to get into the body?
Yeah, so it's funny with the intensives, no matter how many, like I call it the intensive, not just because I lack imagination, but because it's like, this is important. And no matter how much I say how intensive it is, everyone at the end is like, oh my God, that was so intense. Mm-hmm. So for me, there is, a very deep and real need to overcome the mind, because the mind is really full of conditionings and stories. Not that it's like inherently a liar, but just that it has a filter, it looks at life from a certain kind of vantage point and fits everything into the boxes according to that experience that it's already had.
Mm-hmm.
The body is a bigger field. There's just more space and there's more access to much more of us. So, in my mind, I kind of have my rational and maybe I have some emotions but in the body, there's really everything. There's the entire arsenal of my past experience. There's the entire arsenal of my present experience. There's just a greater interface with who I really am. There's a I find a greater opportunity to have an encounter with the truth of how I really am responding to something there than in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all know how that is, right? You're
Yep.
like, I want to do this. Oh, but do I? What does it really mean? What about if I, like it's like the mind is just like it's a its mechanism is to kind of show us all the choices and whereas we know what it is to have a feeling from the gut, it's just like yes, and the mind can be like, but it's like it's a yes or it's a no. It's really easy, and then
Right.
the mind can try to filter that experience, but one of the things that I think we have sometimes lost a bit of touch with is the like resonating truth that can come from the body and the ability to just trust it, even if it goes completely against everything in the mind. And one of the the fundamental things that happens in the intensive is an effort to just like no trust your body, no trust your body, no trust your body. And you probably
Yeah.
saw that by the end, you're like, well, I don't know why, but this is the truth.
Yeah.
And like
Yes.
you everybody walks out like trusting their body a little bit more, which I find.
Right. There was one little exercise, I think, on the first day where we were just, the instructions were just to talk to somebody. And as soon as you feel like you're out of your body, you stop the conversation and you do something to get back in your body, whatever that is. And I remember how hard that was for me, that how many times when I'm talking to other people, I'm just, all the focus is on them and I leave this. So,
Yeah,
a lot of what we did in the intensive was to get back in here so we can, start to trust that and read that.
absolutely. And
Yes.
also, whatever we're giving to the other person is of what value if it's not actually with us. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like we can't have a connection unless we're there. I mean, it sounds really obvious, but we really try often to connect to somebody while we're like
Totally.
floating around in the ether
Yes.
somewhere.
Just floating out there. So, so there's some comments. I want to say hi to Graham. He's letting us know he's here. And
Hi, Graham.
so hi, Graham. So Tantra.
Mm.
So I know my preconceived notion of tantra was it's sex. It's a couple gazing into each other's eyes, breathing, and withholding orgasm to build the energy. And that was pretty much all I knew. You could buy books with different positions. And now that is not the kind of tantra you teach. Can you explain your definition of tantra? It's an easy question.
Yeah, I was gonna say, nice to chuck an easy one at me for the beginning. So here's what I'll put a disclaimer first and say that I have been studying Tantra basically full time. I've lived in places where that's all I do is study. I have studied with many different teachers in many different schools, and I consider myself to be the novice of all novices because this is a field of study which is tremendous. And one of the things that's always been really fascinating to me, is like I go into these different studies, right? Because it's something I'm really enthusiastic about. It's something that really speaks to me. And all these different teachers that I studied with teach something completely different and call it the same thing. And it's like you have moments of meltdown going, is this like something? Is it actually something? Is Tantra really a thing? Or is it just like, like an
Possible.
imaginary?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And the one thing that I have done in my studies is try to feel in all of these different forms of tantra, what is the thread, what is the common ground that they all have, they all build on. And again, not that shockingly, I find it in my body. And there are a couple of points that they all share. And one of them is that most spirituality, I would say the vast majority of spirituality, whatever that might mean for you, and what it means for me is a seeking for the truth, a seeking for some kind of coherent meaning to the reality of existence.
Yes.
There is a basic structural construct, which is I need to find the truth. And in order to do that, I need to get away from the kind of lies of the world, because life is full of lies. Bodies are full of lies. All of the, a lot of places talk about Maya, they talk about sin, they talk about all kinds of things. And it's like, if you want to be holy, if you want to really reach something in the transcendent, you need to reduce, you need to pull yourself out of the world and, take a vow of chastity, take a vow of poverty, go to the mountains, sit in lotus position until your legs turn black, whatever the thing is.
Right.
You got to get away from this, because this is a trap.
And this, so many people raising consciousness is like, yes, this is just the vessel. We're going to shed this. It's nothing. And it's like, no. And yes.
And I wouldn't even say no. I would just say, that doesn't feel true to me. That doesn't feel like what I want to do. Not even, it might be really true. I don't know. I haven't yet mastered the existence of reality. Like, I don't know. I don't know yet, right?
That's true.
But the thing that was really moving for me about Tantra is this just implicit understanding that this truth that I'm seeking for, not only does it reside in me, not only can it be found in me, but it is what breathes life into every single thing that is. And I don't need to go anywhere to find it. I don't need to get away from anything to find it. There is no possibility for me to get into a trap, because the trap is God, and the trap is life, and the trap is whatever thing I'm trying to worship. And there are no possibilities to go anywhere that would get me away from truth. And so all of Tantra uses life. It's a way of saying yes to life in whatever way that it presents itself, as a way to get closer to life, so that I can find the truth. Now, of course, if there is an understanding that every single thing is by nature holy, by definition, everything is made of nothing but the fabric of God, then there can't be any taboos. There can't be anything. And so sexual Tantra arose from this, like, well, okay, if I'm going to use astrology, and I'm going to use feng shui, and I'm going to use Ayurveda, well, then I can use sex. And so it's just one little fragment of an entire tapestry of possibilities of manifestation that can be used in order to reach consciousness.
Right. You talk a lot about, you did in the intensive, and you did on the recent course I just took, which we'll talk about later, that that sex energy is our life force. It is our creative flow. It's our health. It's our vitality. And so it's not just about, having intercourse and having an orgasm, but it's that flow of that essence, that vital force, that's everything. Yeah. So let's talk about the shadow. Because you talk about, getting to our truth, getting to the truth, our truth, in here, out there. And along the way, right? along the path, along the path of life, we come up with these things that happen, right? And we start to put on layers, we start to put up things that starts to draw us. Well, I want you to explain it, but it starts to cover up this truth, this essence. And I have behind me, uncover your essence. And that's what I get from your work that I do with you, is uncovering my essence or my truth. So how would you define shadow work, or the shadow?
So before I do that, I want to speak to something that you just said, because I think it's important.
Okay.
So you were talking about, you want to get to the truth of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want, right? We want to get to like the truth of like
Who am
who
I?
I am,
What's my
why I'm
purpose? Why
here.
I'm here? Yes.
If I am not capable of dealing with the transitory truth of who and how I am right now in this moment, then I have zero possibility to access that deeper truth, because that transitory truth is in the way. It's like going, I only want to know about my essence without looking at, okay, my physical body and my hair color and, the thoughts that go through my mind or whatever other thing. So I find that it's like a step that we sometimes pass, like we kind of just skip over it, and we try to find like the transcendent self without going, here's how I am now. Like, wow, I have anxiety. Wow, I have this thing. Wow, I have. And every time that I try to pretend that I am not everything that I am, I am actually taking a step away from the truth. And so my understanding of the shadow is that it is everything which is beneath the radar of my consciousness. So I have a certain awareness of myself, right? Like, oh, okay, I have this tendency. I like these things. I dislike these things. But there is a whole wealth of experience that happens, which is beyond what I have the capacity to perceive in this moment. And this is what we're calling the shadow. And there are a lot of reasons that it's outside my field of vision, right? One of the main ones is that I don't really see it because it's unpleasant. A lot of times people talk about shadow work as if it's something super sexy and like, ooh, I'm gonna like uncover like some dark goddess in here.
Yeah.
When actually, usually we're gonna like uncover like a really terrified child, for example.
Right.
We're gonna uncover something we're deeply embarrassed of. We're gonna uncover something that we don't want to admit to being. We're gonna uncover selfishness and just shittiness and envy and greed and my experience has been, when I can turn my eye and my study inward and start to see the totality of what I am. And the totality is not just, again, like a celestial being that's just like trapped in this shitty body. It's right. Like, it's all of it. And every time that I take a step in and I study a little bit more of this shadow matter, which is just the stuff that I don't have the ability to see yet, I actually take a step closer to my essence. I take a step closer to the celestial truth of myself, because it's like, that's all there. It's all there.
Right.
And so for me, shadow work is imperative, because we've seen it. My God, we've seen it in the spiritual world so much. People that are calling themselves gurus and abusing others precisely because of this. Yeah. Because they have access to the light, right? But right. They do not have access to the unconscious impulses, which are defense mechanisms, which are such a human, normal, natural thing to have. All of these negative traits that we have, they are all defense mechanisms.
Yes. When you talk about gurus abusing their students, that's one of those points for me that I just detest, because I've had experience with that. Yes. And that makes so much sense, that why they're doing that is because they're not acknowledging that the shadow aspects of themselves are also a part of them. One thing that I've heard you share about shadow is it's not to be cut off. And I think people have that misconception. You do shadow work to release it and slice it and cut it, like kill the ego, right? But you talk about seeing it, acknowledging it, and then as the process goes, integrate it into your being, because it's a part of who we are. Graham asked a question: could one perceive the shadow as the time to absorb understanding? It's an interesting.
As the time to absorb understanding.
I think what he's getting at is kind of what I just said, that the shadow's to be understood, to be looked at.
It's definitely to be understood, because the thing is, so the thing that you were saying, right? Let's imagine like you're born and you're a piece of clay, right? You have you're a piece of, you have a finite thing.
Yes.
And you take some of that clay to create a barrier because like the world hurts and things burn and cut and sting, right? And then you are operating as like, 1/3 of the material that you were to begin with, thinking that that's all there is to you. There's this whole mechanism at play. And then you find out about it and you're like, let's chop it off. And it's like, no, that's you. That's like, it needs to be redefined. It needs to be reassigned. It needs to be resorbed, because we have a finite amount of us, right? Like vital energy. And there is a lot of energy. It's like, we all know what it is to be, for example, you're talking to somebody in your family or your partner or somebody, and inside of you, you're going, don't do it, Laura. Don't say it. Don't say the thing. Mm-hmm. Anything but the thing. Don't do it. Don't say it. Because you say the thing and it's over. And you're like, don't do it. Don't do it. And then suddenly you say it, or you do it. And you're like, I said to you, we're not going to do it.
Yes. Yes.
And that is, when we do repetitive patterns, when we find ourselves in the situations, that we don't want to be in again and again and again, it's because there are parts of us that are stuck in a defense, and they just do the same thing and do the same thing and do the same thing. And we think it's coming from the outside because we don't see it, because we don't want to see it. Mm-hmm. And, like I said, a lot of times we have this idea that working with the shadows, like, I'm going to find like this feisty goddess inside of me.
Right.
And like, I'm actually going to totally. And usually I'm going to find something that repulses me.
Right.
I usually give that as the gauge. Like, if you feel sick,
yes,
you probably hit it. Yeah.
You have said guilt and shame are doorways to the shadow. So if it's like, usually those are the emotions, and probably fear. There's like fear around that too. That if that's what you're going to, when you start into shadow work, that's the stuff that you're looking at, and these parts of ourselves that come up to protect us, to shield us, or to divert things. And
another great one is resistance, as I'm sure you realize.
Thank you.
Like, resistance is one of the best gauges. Like, when you're like, you know what? This is stupid. Like, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. Look at this teacher. She's an idiot. She doesn't even know anything. Like, I'm out of here. Why? We're in a pandemic. Why am I digging into this garbage? I don't want to do this. I'm out of here.
It's funny. And, I'm just going to give a little aside that Laura is speaking about a personal experience that I had during this last course that I took. Actually, the intensive I did as well. Anytime I do shadow work, I know that resistance is going to come up. It just does, because we don't want to look at these parts of ourselves. It's painful. It's yucky. And almost, I think both times I've worked with you, I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I didn't like you very much. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. When you're in person, it's kind of hard to check out, but a virtual component, it's like, that's it. I'm done. I don't like her. Because that little kid part comes up sometimes. So resistance is part of shadow work.
And it's not just you. It's funny, at the end of the course, I had a lot of questions. I sent out a questionnaire, and everybody answered all kinds of different things. And the only question that got a unanimous response was, I put the question, did resistance come up during this course? And there was one possible answer, which was hell's yes. And that got everyone, the only unanimous response that I got from the whole questionnaire was that one.
Yes.
This is how it is. And it's also really important to recognize what an important defense mechanism, resistance is.
Yes.
Because what resistance does is it keeps you away from touching something that is difficult to touch. And this defense mechanism has probably been in place from the time you were 4, 5.
Right.
So it's a really well practiced thing. And it's the same kind of thing that, like, on the playground, goes up to the kid and like wants to play, and the kid goes, no, I don't want to play with you. And you go, I didn't want to play with you anyway.
Exactly.
Like, we learned that real early on,
And then that could potentially become a piece that shows up whenever you feel that rejection or so why on earth would someone want to voluntarily do shadow work? I've had people say, why, as the tears are falling, why am I doing this? Why am I doing shadow work? Why?
I ask myself that question a lot every time, because it's like, I still have to keep doing this stuff. I'm not done. And it's exactly for the reason that I said, because there is, in Dante's Inferno, it's really interesting that he's got the 7 levels of hell. And it's like, you go in and it's like deeper hell and deeper hell and deeper hell. And heaven is actually located after the 7th level of hell. And I think that Dante was on to.
Wow. Yeah.
Because that's where the bliss is. That's where the core is. Like, that's where the more that we train. So there's 2 things. One is that heaven is located after the 7th level of hell for some very courageous reason that I don't really understand. And the other is that the more resistance, like resilience, that we gather to hold negative emotions. And like, this is a lot of what we train in the course, is how to just hold it. There's contradictions, there's bad feelings, there's shame, there's resistance, and it's like, we as a culture, as a society, we really need to work on our emotional resilience. And what that means is the ability to feel shitty.
Yeah.
Like, we're not very good at it. You can see that we instantly want to like send it out to somebody else and like go
or ignore it, or ignore
or
it,
bury it down.
Yes, or send it out, right? But sitting in it and going through it is, yeah.
And the thing is, when we diminish our field of feeling, we don't get to just diminish the negative feeling. It doesn't work like that. Feeling is feeling. That's just assignments put by the brain anyway. Mm-hmm. When we feel less, we feel less. And so one of the wacky side effects of doing shadow work is you feel really bad. And then it opens more space for you to be able to feel really good too. It's like your container gets bigger.
Yes.
You learn to hold more feelings.
Yes. Because once I get through the resistance and keep pushing through and understand, like, have my resources that are going to keep me moving through it, like the little beacons of light, right? Once I'm through it, it is like that. It's like, oh yeah, this is why I voluntarily choose to go through this, because yes, it's an expansion. It's an awareness.
Yes. Wait, I just want to say one thing.
Yes.
And that's another thing, is you recognize when you go into this kind of work that there is somebody who is choosing to go into this work. Yes. That there is an observer.
That's what I was going to bring up. So glad you're bringing it up. And
that is the observer in us. Mm-hmm. This never changing kind of entity that's just there holding the whole business together and just watching it unfurl, is one of our external aspects of our essence, our truth, our spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And so when we start to give energy to our observer, we start to see that we can shift perspective and we can be in the shadow thing that's having the experience, or we can be in something that's holding that whole experience inside of its awareness.
Yes.
And that, my friend, that brings us somewhere really good, you know?
That tool right there, that the observer part of me, it was one of my big takeaways, like really getting familiar with that part of me. And when I'm observing myself engaged in one of my shadow aspects, that's a whole system, as you teach, just being able to kind of step back and observe it without like feeling like I'm in the storm and the tornado of it. You know, I'm still feeling it, but I didn't feel like I was getting tossed around as much, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. So we've mentioned this course that off and on, and you have just, I was a member, I guess you would call it, participant of your very first launch of your first online course. Tell us the name of it and give us a little bit more information about this online course.
Thank you. It's called Alchemy and Intricacy, and it's called a course on the delicate business of being human.
Yes.
And it's basically everything that we've been talking about. It's really trying to do two things: to give us the experience of this. So not just to have a theoretical story, because I could just write a book, right?
Yeah.
But to actually give us an experience of this and to make it personal. Because one of the things that I do see for many on the spiritual path is it becomes very impersonal, and it's like, oh, theory, 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 theory.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we try to really make it like, how does that pertain to me in my life? What are the patterns that are repeating? What are the dissatisfactions that that pattern is generating? Where are the things that I can't go because these things are in place? And also on the flip side, what are my strengths? Like, what are the things that bring me joy? And what are the, what kind of willpower do I have available? So it's a way of training the observer, of really setting aside 3 months to very, very consciously, and with the support of a group, with the support of like just an entire structure, right? So it's like there's recorded sessions, there's homework to do, there's a whole community, there's all of this that really helps it to be digestible. Because in the intensive, it's like I come and hit you over the head with a stick, and it's like, and then you go back out into your real, life. And in this course, in the online course, it's more like we go in, we have this thing, we eat it, we digest it, and then we go out into life.
Right.
And it's like you can observe all of the things that are happening, go, oh, that's this thing, oh, and because there's community support, you share it with people and they go, oh, but I saw this thing, and you go, oh, wow, I didn't even think of that. And it's something that can be integrated into like daily life, so that the transformation that comes about can be, we say in somatic experiencing, titrated. It's like you get a little bit more, and you're able to assimilate this, so that the change that comes about can actually be stable. It can actually be forever, if you want it to be, if you keep feeding that.
Right. Yes. And you also, a couple things. you also add practices in there, where you're giving us asanas, other kinds of breath work, other kinds of practices where we're still like going in here. We're still going into the body. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the video like descriptions in classes, there's like journaling, writing prompts, and then the body work. The live calls with the group is wonderful. And what you are doing it with us. Like, you are not one of those teachers up on the podium sitting in lotus position like I am all knowing. You're freaking doing the activities with us in these lives, and that's what I love about you. um and and then there's an encouragement to do like little listening pods and partners, listening partners. So
Absolutely.
it gives this sense, even though it's an online course, we're still connecting with other people, we're still feeling the community. Yeah, you did a wonderful job translating your work into an online format. You really,
Thank
really did,
you.
Laura.
About the partnerships and the pods and these things, I've been studying the nervous system for some years, and we forget sometimes that we're mammals, and mammals co-regulate. It means like when there's something that happens to the pack, there's a bear or there's a wolf or whatever, the pack soothes the pack. It's not like every little wolf goes off by itself and deals with its emotional charge. It's
Mhm.
like the pack goes, fuck, dude, we went through this thing, and da, da, da. And it's like and we, until fairly recently, also did this. And so it's really important to me to kind of build that into the structure, that we have the opportunity, you know,
Mhm.
to regulate ourselves, to regulate the nervous system as a group.
Yes. Well, and having someone witness, like just listening to my process and yeah, holding space, makes it more real. Then it's not just floating in my head and I'm, trying to connect to people not taking the course and trying to explain to them what's happening. You know what I mean? Like, just giving those opportunities to be with people that are going through the same thing and doing it, like you said, in pieces, and then going out and living your life. And I personally chose to take this course during the 2020 pandemic when the whole world was going through their shadow aspect. And there were times where I went to my friends, I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this during a pandemic. Like, what am I thinking? But it ended up being the perfect time to do it.
Hmm.
So it's so if you are going to get ready to start the course again, do you have a date set for it, or if
We're going
someone
to start on the 21st.
of March
Yes.
2021? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If someone was interested in learning more about the course or maybe register for the course, where do they go for that?
Go to my website. We can leave that somewhere, I'm sure. No.
We'll
Um,
we'll say it too.
pathoftantra.com. Very easy. Very
Yes.
easy. And if it's something that, somebody's thinking about, but they're not sure, I'll be giving a free class next week. I'm not sure which day right in this moment, but it's a chance for us to also do a little practice together, to have a little chance to do some work. And in general, Instagram, well, all the things, Facebook and Instagram and
Right.
shadow band everywhere, really, but I'm
So
there.
pathoftantra.com's like a good place to go just to research a little more. A question was asked if both female and males do this course, and yes, it actually was a nice balance of both. And because it's virtual, it was quite an international uh, student group. It was fantastic, connecting with people all over the world, doing this work together. And I just want to say, oh, someone's asking for the website one more time, and I'll type it in here too, but it is pathoftantra.com. And the course is It's Alchemy and Intricacy. No, Alchemy and Intricacy, the Delicate Business of Being Human. But I want to say we talked a lot about shadow, right? But this course also goes into other aspects that are very positive, that were very revealing, very deep and wonderful. And if you choose to take this course, hang in there, because you will hit resistance. You will want to quit. You will. And just keep going, because the way Lara designs it, it truly is a path. And at the end, the last few segments, it all comes together. And the way you explain everything, just, you know how I feel about you. Just think you're a genius. And I yell that out in my kitchen. You're a genius, Lara, because she just puts it all together. And at the end, I truly had expansion and clarity. And yeah. So
it's so wonderful to hear. It makes me really happy.
Yay. So
powerful for you and positive for you.
It was wonderful. I mean, and I can't wait till I love the virtual option, but I can't wait till we can do in person again, because that is also just a whole nother experience. That's all I can say about that.
It is, and it's also going to be really different after you've done this.
Oh gosh, I'm sure. So is there any last minute things, Lara, that you want to say before we tune off?
The only other thing that I'm going to say is that along with the shadow stuff that's hidden, there's also gold. You know, some of our potential, some of these attributes and beautiful gifts that we're born with, that are kind of innate to our being, are often kind of crumpled in there.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason for working in this way is to shake it all loose, you know, and kind of sift the gold out from the mud.
Mm-hmm.
And that one of the things is to also just get this wholeness. You know, what we want is to be whole, what we want is to be entire. You know, often we're like, I want to do this, and then there's like, how often do you sit down to do a thing? You're like, I'm going to do this, and then it's like, pew, the mind is here and the body is here, and the next thing you're going to have a cup of tea, and it's like, what we want is to gather the whole force of this being into one clear direction.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the goal of this work, mine and any work that's going in this direction, you know, is to get us back to wholeness.
Yes. That's a wonderful place to stop. Back to wholeness. Lara, it has been a pleasure.
Oh, Trisha, thank you so much for inviting me. It was really lovely to talk to you always.
Yes.
And it's really beautiful what you're doing here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you
wonderful. Wonderful. So pathoftantra.com. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And we'll see you next time on BAM, Badasses, Alchemists, Mystics. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Go to bamcommunity11.com for more information about Badasses, Alchemists, Mystics.